Okay, thank you all for joining us again, and we appreciate your patience while we sort through the accessibility offerings. To enable the closed captioning, please click on the More button that should be located at the bottom of your screen. It gives you the option, excuse me, of selecting subtitles or the full transcript. So again, welcome. Thank you so much for taking time to be here. We're going to provide just some quick background, but really leave space for us to engage in conversation around the rental subsidy program for special populations. So just to help invite and welcome you into the space, please put your name and organization into the chat. Introduce yourself. And I will share our mission, vision, and values. So the mission of Chicago's Department of Housing is to expand access and choice for residents and to protect their right to quality homes that are affordable, safe, and healthy. The equitable distribution of resources across all 77 communities so that every Chicagoan can choose and remain in quality housing that is affordable, safe, and healthy. And this is rooted in our core values as being equitable, collaborative, dedicated, and resourceful. And just to introduce myself and the team of folks supporting this work, my name is Natasha Hamilton. I'm the Managing Deputy Commissioner for Community Engagement and Racial Equity. I'm very excited to be a part of this team. We are a very new team as of last month, but very grateful to be working alongside Esther and Aaron, who have created really the foundation for the work with delegate agencies and also thinking about partnerships through the lens of community engagement and racial equity. So very excited to be here and that you are choosing to spend your morning with us as well. And with that, I will turn it to Esther to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Esther Gutierrez with the pronouns she, her, ella. I am the program director for the Delegate Agencies Division here, and over the summer, I was also one of the co-leads for the evaluation committee in which we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to my colleague, Aaron.
Hello, I'm Aaron Johnson, he, him, his. I'm project manager for community engagement and racial equity, and with Esther served as one of the evaluation committee's co-leads. Thank you all for joining us here. Does this also look weird for you?
It does look weird.
I can also state background. So
I can state the background. I can state the background, and we can actually, we're going to copy and paste and enter this into the chat so you can follow along as well. Thank you so much, Aaron. Again, Natasha, she, her pronouns. So a bit of background: in partnership with the Chicago Low Income Housing Trust Fund, or CLIF, the city created the special initiatives to house vulnerable populations. And so following a community review process and conversations with CLIF executive director and also the board of directors, the executive committee and DOH decided to revise this program and to have that administered by an organization with experience working with these populations. It's trying to create a bit more alignment. And our goal for this program is to serve current populations with a more inclusive lens and to transition from a landlord-based subsidy to a tenant-based subsidy. And so with that, I will turn it over to Esther.
Esther, I can share my screen again. It's English again. I don't know what was it with that.
Yeah, that was a very interesting slide there. Okay, so as part of the evaluation committee, which we over the summer, there was a specific set within the Chicago Low Income Housing Trust Fund's portfolio that we took a close look at, very specifically the special initiatives portion of it, which encompasses the following efforts in providing services for the following vulnerable communities. And that was the Chronic Homeless Initiative, the Families First Initiative, Families in Transition, Homeless Dedicated Initiative and Prevention, Homeward Bound, People Living with HIV/AIDS, Puerto Rican Evacuees, the Veterans Initiative, and Women's Self-Sufficiency. And then we're going to go touch on a higher level overview of each program and what it entailed in the next slide. for chronic homelessness, the effort was to provide provide funding for permanent housing opportunities for up to 45 households who were taking up residents in current homeless encampments. We also had the Families First initiative, which provides permanent supportive housing for formerly homeless families and then link them to workforce development and other opportunity areas. We also had Families in Transition, which provided up to 100 Chicago public school families living in shelters or that were doubled up with affordable permanent rental housing. This was done in collaboration with the Department of Family and Supportive Services and other organizations with expertise in this area. There was also the Homeless Dedicated Initiative, which was led to help homeless individuals and families to obtain safe and affordable rental housing and maintain permanent housing through supportive wraparound social services. The Homeless Dedicated Prevention Initiative was to assist previously homeless families who had lost their rental assistance following the termination of a federally funded program. Next slide, please. Homeward Bound was to successfully house unsheltered homeless single adults in stable permanent housing and to provide supportive services that focus on housing retention, connect participants with a source of income, and engage participants in substance abuse treatment and mental health services, of course, if that was applicable. For people living with HIV and AIDS, it was to provide permanent housing opportunities for up to 100 individuals living with HIV and AIDS with rental subsidies. For Puerto Rican evacuees, it was to provide temporary rental assistance to Puerto Rican individuals and families who were displaced by Hurricane Maria back in September 2017. For the Veterans Initiative, it was to improve delivery of services to veterans and the families of veterans by providing accessible and co-located services. And finally, for the Women's Self-Sufficiency, it was to provide rental assistance to 15 women who are leaving the sex trade. So this was very specific to the evaluation of the special initiatives, which encompass this program and the performance of this program. And I'm gonna go ahead and hand it off to Aaron, who will lead our discussion effort.
Okay, so I have no clue what's happening with our slides, but we can lead you through our discussion, which is probably better because we can see each other for the discussion. Natasha, if you can put the questions in the chat, that would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, so our first question is, how can DOH structure this program to serve vulnerable populations? So I guess the heart of this question is what are things that we should think about that are key for us while figuring out how to provide a rental subsidy program for the populations that were mentioned? So people who've experienced homelessness, people living with HIV/AIDS, people with school-age children, veterans, and then people who are leaving sex work as well. So I ask if you can use, at the bottom of your screen, you see the reaction button. It looks like a little smiley face with a plus sign in it. And you can use the raise hand feature. That will just help us call on you to do that. And at that point, once you've been called on, feel free to unmute yourself and then talk. Yes, you can also put questions in the chat, and then we'll try to give voice to them. Okay. I am sorry if I mispronounced your name. So, Kohu?
Yeah, it's Sochi.
Okay. Sochi, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think one of my recommendations that I'd like the DOH to consider is, I know a lot of current rental assistance applications oftentimes require a lease or some sort of written acknowledgement from the landlord. And the difficulty I'm running with is usually with the undocumented community. While they are eligible to apply for rental assistance, many landlords typically don't provide them leases. And, the city also doesn't it doesn't mandate landlords to provide leases, which is very problematic for me, just because we can't force the landlord to issue a lease, but then a rental assistance program is requiring one. And so many times the tenants I work with, undocumented community, aren't able to apply for rental assistance because of that one component. So I'm not sure if like anyone's run into it, but it's like a huge issue with this community that I'm working with, that even though they are able to apply for, which is great, it's this huge barrier that gets in their way.
Yeah, and I guess I'll make sure, thank you for that. And I'll make sure what I'm pulling from is making sure that, particularly with the undocumented people, that leases typically aren't offered to those folks. So how do we work with that? And I also want to clarify, this is for a rental subsidy program, not rental assistance. So a rental subsidy program, what we're thinking is that it's similar to a voucher program that we would pay a portion of the rent for the tenant, and then the rest, based off their income, would be what they cover. And so a lease is still important because a lease is still necessary for to have that agreement. So that's, I think, thank you for raising that issue, is that a lot of undocumented folks, even if they're being able to part of the program, that there's that barrier that landlords present. So how do we work with that?
Thank you for clarifying. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, no problem. And then Jonathan Murray, I see your hand up.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for taking the time to make this session work. So currently I work within the hub. It's in Halstead. So my client demographic is people living with HIV and also PrEP users. I think that's something to be said. And someone had thrown it in the chat, I believe Joy. Screening landlords is very important because as it stands now, I think that even if we're not able to get an official lease agreement, something that we've been using is a document called the rental agreement form. So essentially it functions the same way as a lease while we're getting that subsidy, while we're getting that assistance percolating, and it can help move things smoother. But I think that a lot of the issues we run into are once we kind of, get everything, the ball rolling, once the clients are able to get that subsidy, what does it look like to tell landlords, okay, if you're accepting help from this program, what's the due diligence there? I think, as you know, with DOH, and I actually experienced it firsthand, there were instances of landlords receiving rental assistance post-COVID, where some of that rental assistance was supposed to, cover future months of rent, and like landlords kept that rent and then still evicted tenants, or people were told to move. So I think that it would be a bit more of an involved program. That's just my thoughts, and those implementations I feel like should be pretty helpful if landlords are still getting paid, but just making sure that the tenants are still in good living arrangements.
Yeah, and just to clarify, you say living arrangements, it's also like the unit quality, or I guess like a little bit dig deeper on the screening. What kind of screening should we be doing?
I appreciate that. And I think that unit quality, it's really hard to oversee that. You kind of want to do things in good faith, but I think most of it's just understanding that, is the landlord someone who's going to be corresponding with the tenant, taking care of things? Is that tenant going to be housed, or are they just going to, end up either kind of caught in a living situation because this is where their subsidy is going, where the landlord's actually not a good landlord? And I know that those things are difficult to screen for, but considering when subsidies and assistance are added to the mix, I know that people are readily available to accept those resources, but then necessarily the clients aren't always being given the best living experiences after the fact.
Yeah, thank you.
You can see Rose.
Oh, Rose, sorry, I was muted. Rose.
Hi. One of the issues, I work with the Latino community, and one of the issues that we have is that a lot of the are undocumented, as Xochitl had said before, but there's also an issue that they sublease from the primary leaser. How would that benefit them? Because they sometimes are asked to leave, or they don't have any backing because they don't have the documentation either. Would they be able to qualify for this too?
So if I'm understanding correctly, it is when people are subleasing from another person.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And so in this typical case, I'll just say how rental subsidy programs typically work is that the person with the subsidy, with the voucher, or whatever it is the one who has the lease agreement with the landlord, because that is the person who has to qualify for the payment subsidy. I'm not entirely sure though how people can bring those two subleases though. So that is something to for us to be mindful of and just figure out, like, talking about that if someone wants to live in the place of the sublease. Okay, the next question we have on our list is, are there specific vulnerable populations that DOH should prioritize? So again, we listed the ones that were school-age children, people living with HIV, AIDS, veterans, people who have faced homelessness, people leaving sex work, and the Puerto Rican evacuees, which I believe that program kind of like sunsetted because that's not as a major concern, but in thinking about how we can do that work and move forward. So are there any additional priority populations that you think we all should consider for rental subsidy? I see Colleen has her hand up.
I guess this is kind of maybe related and not exactly answering your question, but I mean, I think one big struggle with these programs as they've been previously is that there's not a lot of transparency for all of them about how you apply or get into them, and it can, yeah. So I think kind of whatever priority populations are identified, having a greater emphasis on transparency about, who is eligible, how to apply, what those income, intake streams are, will be a huge improvement.
Yeah, thank you. And so I'm hearing just clarity on eligibility, how to apply for these programs, and making sure that's very clear at the subset and not hidden from people as a resource. Joy.
Hello. I would say for the populations to prioritize people with disabilities, particularly mental health challenges, as well as registered sex offenders.
Thank you. Do you want to speak more to that?
Sure. Registered sex offenders, it's hard sometimes to find housing that's appropriate and available and accessible, that they are able to rent out. So prioritizing that population would be great. Individuals who have mental health challenges a lot of times in our housing programs can be discriminated against by landlords because they don't understand the challenges that our participants are presenting with. So just being sure that we have some type of housing just accessible for them, and and the landlords have an understanding that we're providing supportive services and able to provide additional supports to assist them.
Yeah, thank you. So you're prioritizing people who are in the sex offender registry and people with mental health illnesses, and also just being clear with landlords on the types of supportive services that are coming with folks. So
yeah, I know we have a humanitarian crisis going on at the moment. Has the DOH considered, opening up this rental subsidy program for refugees and asylees?
Yes, yes, we have. So actually, we're working on another program right now to provide that support for people who are refugees, asylum seekers, and looking forward in the future for people who may be climate refugees as well, as that will probably become a larger issue in the years to come. So that is something we are working on, but I think I'm glad you raised that, because that is something for us to keep in mind for how that can support the same kind of program. Jose.
Good morning, everyone. Jose Marco from the Latino Policy Forum, and thank you for convening this meeting. I was also thinking about the migrants being sent primarily from Texas, so it's good to hear that the city is thinking about a housing even if it's a temporary solution, right, for them. That's something that we're really looking forward to hear what the program is about. The other population that we think about and that we're particularly interested in, it's in the doubled up families. I don't know how this program is considering homeless, but as we know, the Latino experience, usually it's families that are doubled up, and usually because of the HUD definition cannot apply for a lot of the assistance. So that would be a priority for population for us, and see how they can benefit from this program. Again, when we were talking about, I think it's also important to understand where are you going to be drawing from for referrals. I think that is important, right? And see what the list, and ensuring, right, that there's, in our case, right, and in our interest, that there's that there are Latino families. Usually what we're seeing is that usually there's not so many Latino participation in the vouchers programs. So I think that knowing from where we're going to be drawing from, ensuring that there are organizations that work with the Latino population, right? And then understanding if you're thinking, how is DOH thinking about equity when putting out these vouchers, right? That will be a conversation that I would be interested in having, right? And how are you going to consider what equity would look like, right? What's the criteria that you're looking at, right? And ensuring that, again, that families can apply. And overall, I also think, besides the equity conversation, I think that understanding who would be eligible, and then, as it's been mentioned, how to apply, and having organizations who are really helping folks apply to these kind of programs, having them at the table when you're coming, right, with the criteria, what are the documents that you're going to require. I think that it's really important, because we often find that these folks are not at the table when these decisions are being made. And then we find ourselves seeing that certain populations these programs are not accessible. Some populations are not able to access for certain reasons, right? And these organizations are the ones who have the expertise, right? And know how something can work for the population that they're serving. So that's another suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Jose, I just have a couple of follow-up questions. So since we are still building this, so that's why we wanted to have this listening session before we do that. So are there particular referral sources that you think would be helpful for us to do, and certain organizations that you think would be helpful for us to consider to make sure that the Latino population is showing up in these applications?
I think it's a matter of understanding which organizations serve primarily Latinos, serve primarily undocumented folks, right? And we can even provide a list of community-based organizations providing primarily housing services to these communities, right? So having an offline conversation and who are the partners that we have to be looking at, right? That would be useful.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Next, I have, I don't know, I keep muting myself, I'm sorry. I'm also sorry if I mispronounce your name. Deidre?
It's Deirdre.
Deirdre, okay, great.
Yes, I would like to see some focus around those that are fleeing domestic violence situations. And a lot of times when we speak to domestic violence, we automatically think about women. And yes, they are fleeing it, but also there are men as well that have children with them that are actually fleeing domestic violence situations. So I would like to see that family unit be given some consideration for the Section 8, the rental subsidy.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next I have Sandra.
Hi, good morning. This is actually Doreen. I'm at Sandra's desk because my microphone doesn't work. I'm with Casa Central La Posada, and right now we work specifically with families. And so a population that I'm curious to see how you can work about in terms of space. We have large families, and we find a lot of trouble with locating or placing families in apartments because the apartments are too small or there isn't enough space for families. So I know, again, Chicago apartments, like the most that I've seen are 3 bedrooms. Now, we have families that are a family of 8, 10 sometimes, and so we need larger units, if not houses. Is there an option or something looking into to see how to accommodate large families that are over 6 individuals in a family unit?
Thank you for highlighting that, Doreen. I think that's an important thing of just how do we connect with landlords who also have inventory at those larger unit sizes or even homes that they may be renting out. So I think that's a very important consideration, because I think typically when we talk about family size units, it's like the 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, but that remembering that there's considerations for families that are larger families that also need to be served. So thank you. Next I have Jemla.
Oh, hi, Ellen.
Hey.
Hi, yes. I have the clarification. Like, I need clarification regarding the voucher, the housing, like by the eligibility description, like from the county website, like not the other than the people with legal status. There are some specific like a population can apply, like it can be eligible for the voucher, the housing as well. But I don't know. That's exactly like what the population is eligible, like the U visa holder, like with EAD, but it's not granted. Would anybody else have the idea about the eligibility for voucher program? Since the city of Chicago opened to the refugee, like the population, we hear like their request whether they are eligible for such housing, but we were not able to answer exactly. So I would like to ask if you have any idea about it.
Yeah, so this is local funds, it's corporate city funds, so we don't have the same restrictions as the federal government puts on it, which is great. So I guess that's the so yes, we would make sure that undocumented folks, people who are being refugees and other kind of classifications could be able to be served by this program. But I think it's important for us just to remember that people are coming here at a variety of different statuses. So just making sure that's encompassed. The county law also, requires that undocumented folks can also be housed. So, but I do think it's important that we keep that in mind and make sure that we're not being exclusive in the way that we write these. And again, that's also why we're doing this session, is because it's local funds and we have the flexibility. We want to make sure that we are building a program that's suited for our local needs as well. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I will move on to our next question. What structures do you all think need to be in place for this program? So like supportive services or other things to ensure housing stability for residents. So I also hear that there is landlord screening that needs to be done to make sure they understand, and education pieces. So is there anything else that you all recommend that we do to ensure housing stability? I see Jonathan.
Thank you so much. So I really want this to be like a more open and involved question, because it's an issue that we've had with our program, is where you don't want to restrict people's access to these subsidies and these assistances, but we are a bit stringent about if the clients in question are working. So I think that we can't give someone a total overhaul of financial literacy, but it's very important to, kind of discuss with your clients prior to entering this agreement about what it looks like for the longevity of them being able to support themselves for rent. I think that's something to look into, is you don't want to become landlords yourself, restricting people, but like, how long have they been working? How long have they been having this consistent income? And what it would look like if, this income was taken away. So I think that budgeting requirements, like maybe a little 101, things of that nature, kind of factoring in also, if possible. I know a lot of landlords are able to figure out from previous tenants or themselves what utilities would look like, things of that nature, And I think that also, if possible, if someone qualifies for the subsidy, you could also talk to them about things that like iLeap, which is like an energy saving program, things of that nature, to kind of just do a package deal to get them settled in with their utilities being fixed, things of that nature. And then so they have a number to know how much they'll be responsible for their own living.
Thanks, Jonathan. So I guess what I'm hearing is part of the supportive services is that there's a financial component that helps people, even with their subsidies, stay housed. And then understanding what are the costs, the total costs that go around with housing, not just your rent, but the utility. And then what are the resources that are out there to help them pay and stay housed and be able to provide for their portion of the rent. So thank you.
Thank you.
Michael?
Hi, good morning. I think any of these programs or however the RFP looks, it would be great if some of the funding could be dedicated to allowing the agencies to hire staff or support staff who do additional wraparound services. I know for our clients, a lot of times they don't necessarily have connections to things like getting in SNAP benefits, and I work with HIV clients and they need resources and support getting connected to medical case management and things like that. So knowing that we could use some funding for additional full-time employees who can dedicate time to helping clients connect to these services to provide more wraparound care would be hugely beneficial to our programs and really help us support our clients and especially our clients who have medical needs as well.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just hearing, making sure that if we RFP this out, that the percentage that it's also allowed not only to provide subsidies, but also to provide the wraparound services or staff to manage this program and the services that are needed with that. Angelica.
Hello. Echoing what Michael was saying about wraparound services, definitely it's a need for follow-up services to make sure that they sustain their housing and they get all of the services they need, whether it's like for education, legal, health, et cetera, but also maybe some set aside funding to help clients get furniture for their for their housing. Also, like maybe some applications that if you need help with like a security deposit, or I don't know how that aspects of the program works, but like definitely there's a need for help for deposits, for first month's rent, if that's added onto the subsidy of the program. And yeah, the furniture aspect is definitely important as well. Yeah, or any startup, because it'll be the first time that many of the clients maybe have their names under utilities and they need a deposit in order to cover just starting utility bills. I think it's like about $150, or maybe moving expenses, like you know, like a truck or something to move. Maybe they have furniture, but they need help with a truck, and most of the time they don't have like licenses in order to rent out trucks. So definitely set aside money for help with like movers or like a truck or some sort of service like that.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's very important for us to keep in mind that just living in your apartment is not, like, just paying rent is not the only things that are associated with your housing costs. So if there's maybe some flexibility with moving costs, security deposits, and things like that. So thank you so much for that. Next I have Sam.
Hi, thank you for hosting this listening group. I appreciate it. So I think my thoughts might have maybe something more to do with the first question, the DOH structure, but it also I think has to do with the structure for housing stability for individuals. So I've been a case manager in the Homeward Bound program since 2018. And I've seen like the biggest problem is that the CLIFT program has been landlord friendly, like catering to landlords, trying to sort of be stable in the program over a long period of time. And unfortunately, that's attracted landlords who, in my experience, have no interest in maintaining units. And so while it adds some degree of housing stability, quote unquote, for clients, I've had people who've had trouble moving in a variety of different situations, related to VAWA, related to wheelchair accessibility, related to safety. And so my biggest thing is that for this particular program is a tenant-based or a tenant-friendly voucher where they could actually move. it's manifested poorly in a variety of different instances. And I've had to transfer a few people out of the program because of how difficult it was to move people, because a lot of new landlords didn't want to work with the program. So that's the biggest thing. I think another thing that's sort of a structural thing for my clients is, Colleen mentioned it in the chat, but the zero income clients. So my program will accept people without income, but there's always this looming threat that if you don't get a job or don't get on SSI or DI, that you could be dropped from the program, and I've had people at risk of eviction because of that. And so some sort of clarity about, rather than like a zero income waiver that could be pulled at any time, which is what it has been, having people get referred to appropriate programs, or really not just be at risk of eviction if they were to lose their source of income, that the program would accommodate that or switch them to a different program. So I could go on, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you so much. So for the first piece that I got, so we are planning for this to be a tenant-based subsidy. The committee the evaluation committee we hosted really highlighted that, but I think it's still being clear on the process for how people move, especially when there's cases of domestic violence or accessibility needs or just change in family size, that they need to have, a place that just fits their needs better. And then the other one is thinking about people who may lose their income or may come without income, like how are we making sure those people are being served by appropriate programs, or making sure that they know, but not having that threat of feeling like they're going to be losing their voucher as well. Thank you. So next I have Rose.
Hi. One of the things, I work with a population that is the immigrant population, as I mentioned before, but they are usually paid in cash. They are not have a usual way of proof of income. We do provide letters that to our members that we can validate what they have been reporting on their tax issue stuff. But sometimes, for example, in the pandemic, they weren't making any income. And that worries me in that situation. Some of the persons were evicted, even though they shouldn't have been, in the middle of the pandemic. Would there be a place or an ability for them to receive help also?
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is making sure that there's a way to self-certify your income, especially for people who may work in the informal economy or paid in cash, that they can self-certify and not necessarily have, because they won't have bank statements or things like that or pay stubs. So that is a move we had made in some of our programs. So to make sure that we continue that move into this program as well. So thank you so much for that. Lolita?
I know what I'm gonna say is a little bit out there, but just dealing with calls on the hotline from like voucher holders, one of the things that I've seen is that landlords use things that they find on credit or background checks to try to do side deals with tenants. So my thing is, if the DOH is going to be doing this, does the landlord necessarily have to with this particular program? Because you're talking about an extremely vulnerable population. And we find that tenants do these side deals with landlord, which includes giving them more money just to get the unit or something like that. And agreeing to things that they normally wouldn't agree to just to be able to qualify for these rental subsidies. Another group that I noticed too that we didn't mention is seniors. And while it is a lot of senior housing, it is also a long waiting list for it. And what we're seeing is a lot of gentrification in neighborhoods where we have vulnerable senior populations at, and their fixed income doesn't allow for them to stay in their housing. So they may have to go with family, or a lot of them end up being homeless because of it. So I know we didn't mention that population, but I would like it considered as well. And just a lot of extra education to these groups, because you have things like landlords saying that they have to have 3 times their income to qualify for a unit or something like that, even though they're going to be receiving this rental subsidy. So we know that a lot of people don't have the background on this or the education around this, but definitely a lot of wraparound services and additional education would be good for the program. And one of the things I had to do when I was a property manager was to get an Illinois leasing license. So definitely some additional education for landlords that are going to participate in the program, as well as them not being able to end a lease early should they choose to without good cause. As we have a lot of tenants that receive vouchers that the landlord decides that they don't want to participate, and then the tenant is scrambling for another unit. And like around this time of year, it's really becoming a problem.
Yeah, thank you. So I hear one is educating tenants and landlords on source of income discrimination, is what it sounds like, and just the fair housing laws that we have in place in Chicago, that tenants know how to report these kind of cases if they are being discriminated against for having a voucher, and that landlords understand what their rights and responsibilities are under these types of programs. And another population that we want to consider are seniors, and especially it seems like seniors who live in areas that are have home prices that are rapidly increasing due to gentrification, that we are also making sure that those seniors are preventing homelessness and being housed too. So thanks, Lolita.
I do have a follow-up question to that, Lolita, specifically on the request to include the senior populations. Is there a way we can kind of further narrow down specifically what kind of seniors are facing this hardship? Is it seniors with an accessibility need? Is it seniors with a mental health service need? Just to be able to kind of just hone in a little bit more.
No, it's regular seniors living in market rate housing. We have all of these developers coming in now, purchasing large pieces of land and wanting to rehab, and the seniors have to leave that have been there for a long time. But I can send you a list of some of the work that our building organizers are doing in those neighborhoods where we're seeing this problem the most.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julie.
Yeah, thanks. My point and question is about populations served. So one of the concerns that we've had for many years is that there were commitments made to serve a certain number of homeless households through these special initiatives, and then units were lost through a variety of problems, including mismanagement and landlords just simply renting to folks that were not part of the program, and a number of bad policies that contribute to this. And so, you know, there currently is a number of homeless dedicated units that are supposed to be occupied, and then there's a number that's actually occupied. And so my question is the thinking at this time that you're going to eliminate all of these different categories of special initiatives, because there's a lot of them, and I know that some of them are very much overlapping, like there's different ones serving chronically homeless populations that just have a different name. And so I'm interested to know whether the thinking is, you know, to get rid of these categories and make it one big program or not. And then my concern is that we maintain the city's commitment to the number of units that were dedicated to people experiencing homelessness, certainly no less than we have now, but ideally going back to the intended number. And, you know, people experiencing homelessness are inclusive of these other populations that people are concerned about. Seniors, undocumented folks, migrants, refugees are all included, but I wouldn't want to see, as a result of this restructuring, a smaller number of units that are specifically dedicated to people who are homeless.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. We are working closely with DFSS on this initiative, and making sure that we fully understand the picture of the programs, which are the homeless dedicated ones, the people experiencing homelessness programs. Typically, making sure that we understand what that is and actually crunching the numbers of how much are being utilized. And then, like you said, there's a lot of loss that's happened So we're trying to understand what has been underutilized as well. And so that is our intention, is obviously not to lose units, or amounts of units, but making sure that people are stably housed. And also part of what we're seeing is that that tenants have their flexibility. As we know, a lot of these units are in parts of the city where they may not be where people want to live, so that may mean paying higher rents for some folks. So it's just us trying to get a fuller picture right now, but that is our intention, not to decrease the number of units. And again, we've been partnering closely with DFSS on this initiative. Colleen.
I agree with what's been said by a lot of people, and I think it kind of gets to this idea of like, in terms of how this program should be structured to promote housing stability. I mean, I think that there's a need for clarity about what the ultimate goal and role of this, the subsidy side of what's really a permanent supportive housing program is. And to me, it's always to do everything you can, to help the tenants remain in their housing. And it's not the appropriate role of the subsidy side to be like pushing people to work, or things like that, really, which is what really inflexible policies on the subsidy side do, when there's no kind of accessible option if you lose your income or you don't have income coming in, and really intrusive questions being asked about why people aren't working or why they might not qualify for Social Security. All of those things to me are when the subsidy becomes very intrusive and it's not very helpful to people if they're housed through a subsidy that wants to prioritize them because maybe they're low income and undocumented, but then they have to jump through many hoops to demonstrate I can't qualify for Social Security benefits, when the policy could just be more flexible kind of upfront. So I just wanted to offer that I think kind of keeping that goal and redesigning this program, that the goal is really to help extremely low income people remain stably housed, and individual policies need to be crafted with that in mind, which I think in the past sometimes policies are taking that approach that the United States loves to do with welfare policy, which is to become really interested in people's lives and people's choices, and are they working, why aren't they working? And I don't think it's appropriate.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is keeping housing first as the key for this one. So the goal being people are housed and then providing the resources that people need for them to be remained housed and live full lives that they want to live. And then the secondary concern, is being, accessing people those services and things like that, but that's not the primary concern of like people being made to work. It is 11 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of people's time. I appreciate you all joining this meeting, sharing this. This is not the end of what we want to hear. And of this conversation. So on your screen and in the email that I sent out, there is a survey. I have all you all's emails, so we can follow up with the survey link again. So if you scan this QR code, you can get access to the survey. But we'll follow up with the recording of this meeting and the survey link for you to continue to provide your feedback. Also, feel free to reach out to me. If you have questions, want to talk more about this, I am available for that. But I really do deeply appreciate you all spending your morning with us and sharing these very important things as we develop this program. And then again, just remember, and as you're filling out this information, that this is local funds that don't have the federal stipulations on them. So I think this is your chance to really let us hear what you think will be the best designed program, so that we can try to get to housing stability and choice. As Natasha read in our department's mission and vision, like we really do want people to have choice. And the commissioner has said multiple times, that people who require a subsidy to live should have as much a choice and option as anyone else who does not require a substitute to live. So thank you all. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Aaron, if possible, would you be able to send us your contact information?
Sure, yeah. And I have everyone's email because you register for this. So I'll send an email and so you all have my email information.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks.